Brianna. So good to meet you. Hi. Sorry.
So we have everyone. Simon, were you able to?
She's cleaning up her screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, just checking.
Like it might have gone right to your calendar. Is this Simon at sstrauss.net?
Yeah, I got join the Zoom. That one?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm getting so many links. Things are getting lost in the shuffle.
So we are live streaming, just so everyone is aware. And as soon as Emily's ready, I'm going to start recording.
Okay, let's bring the meeting to order. 4:22.
Recording in progress. So you're gonna be.
We're gonna just move forward with the presentation.
We can follow the. Can you?
And speakers as well.
Okay. Is everyone else muted also? Yes, okay. So just a note that the common council is gonna be moving in here at like 6:15, so we need to be out at 6:15. So you can go through the agenda as it is.
Okay, so I want to welcome the guests, but first, and we'll welcome our new member. So I guess we have Susan Gillespie, Marcy Cleveland,
Dana Hall.
Dana Hall,
And what?
and
Simon Strauss.
Strauss from, and they're going to be giving a presentation on the community energy or CCA. Okay, so I want to welcome our new member, Brianna Gary. Do you want to say anything?
Thank you guys for having me.
And where are you from?
I'm from Kingston, and I go to SUNY New Hope, and I'm a geography major.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
So you have GIS experience?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Be afraid. Oh, great. I'm so glad to see you. So what year are you?
I graduate in December.
In December.
Yeah.
Should we introduce
We'll
ourselves?
get you a local, we'll get you a local job.
Yes, no leave.
Okay, so we can go around the room and introduce ourselves. My name is Emily Hauser. I live about 5 blocks away.
I'm Ted Greasy. I work uptown. I live uptown.
And he's on the land trust.
Yes, I am.
He's an employee of the land trust. Of Logan.
Yes.
I'm Kevin McAvoy. I'm the secretary of this board, and I'm also on the land trust and on the historic boards for the city of Kingston as well. I live on Delaware Avenue down the hill, where this Kingston one.
I'm Helen Atkinson. I live in Uptown Kingston. I'm a writer and journalist.
I'm Anita Collins. I've lived in Kingston for 1.5 years and we'll be moving into a new house sometime. It's, I'm a retired hunting consultant.
And I'm Julie Noble. I'm the sustainability coordinator for the city of Kingston. And I'm staff liaison to the CDC.
So any modifications to the agenda?
I have a request for the next, sorry, for the next minutes. So I'll save that. for later. Sorry, no changes.
Okay. Sorry, review and approval of the monthly meeting minutes. I didn't see any changes. That needs to be done.
Well, could I just say, I would love to see it when because I know that, and this is totally on me, I've lost my notes from last meeting and I forgot what I committed to do, so I've been utterly useless. And it would be great if the minutes included any action items that were committed.
Yeah, and I apologize because I was trying to do an action item at the end, and so I'll also try to do that. So
Right,
that we just kind of.
that would be great.
Okay, this is what we decided to do.
I mean, usually, I make a note of what I've agreed to do, but for some reason it got lost somewhere. So
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
you were writing a 500-page report.
Oh, that, no wonder I forgot. Thank you.
So, anyway, okay. Yeah, no, that's important. All right, so can we have a motion to accept the minutes?
So, I
Okay.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so that was fine. Now then we'll go ahead with the special presentation. So let us know if you can hear us, if you can't hear us. Okay, so on the copy for the agenda. Okay, so this is about community choice aggregation.
So in the middle of the table, you will see a one pager. And so this is to help to guide us. I wanted to have the Mid-Hudson Energy Transition team come in to present to the CAC. This is also, of course, a public meeting, so this is all available to the public as well. We recently, last year, the city of Kingston adopted the local law to allow community choice aggregation in the city of Kingston. And in the meantime, we developed a request for proposals and put that out. And we eventually chose to award that administrator position to Mid-Hudson Energy Transition. This was official as of just a few weeks ago. And so they're going to walk us today through what CCA is and the process. We will be making this similar presentation to Common Council when the time comes. But this is certainly a time for folks to ask questions, for us to hone in on our presentation and our materials. So you're all a guinea pig while also learning about what the process is about. So I'm going to pass it over to Simon, who is here in person, and the rest of the team is here remotely. Simon, if you wanted to share your screen, you can go ahead.
Okay,
And you can also come to the table if you'd like.
sure, yes.
You can, there's one here, you can sit over here, or you can sit next to me. Where do you want to sit?
Okay.
I'm going to give you this chair.
Okay.
I'm going to sit here.
Are you infectious?
Relax.
Okay, am I can share?
Yeah.
You can check.
I know it's not like the virus, but everybody else is.
It's taking its time. There we go.
All right.
Get there eventually.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a way, because there's no marking at this time of day, right?
Okay, can everyone see this okay?
Yes.
So as
Yes.
quick introductions, my name's Simon Strauss. I am the treasurer and a board member of Mid-Hudson Energy Transition. We are a not-for-profit that was incorporated in August of last year. But we've been working on the concept of CCA along with the Ulster County's Climate Smart Communities Working Group and stuff we've been there for the last couple of years. And we all owe my colleague, who you can't quite see on the picture, but Susan Gillespie, who is the president of the Mid-Hudson Energy Transition and was running the working group within the Climate Smart Communities Working Group, putting all this together. Susan was kind enough to ask me to join her, along with Manager Green and some of the others involved in that, to work on the concept. Oops.
Oh, no.
My serum just disappeared. Let's try again. It's up on my screen, but it will stay up. So that's a little bit of the background, and please do interrupt with questions as we go through this. As Julie said, this is practice for us. We've done one conceptual presentation, except it wasn't a presentation because we did a Q&A with the Climate Smart Kingston the day after the press release. The press release was October 26th and the meeting was the day after. So we said, well, there, we'll do some practice. We did, Julie presented to the Common Council. We helped put that presentation together. And in fact, some of the pictures that are in here were some of those Kingston pictures. So we've used some of the great photography that the city has got in putting together both this presentation and the original one. We've added the logo that you can see in the top left, which was the product of much of Marcy Cleveland's work with the city. I hope everyone likes it. This is etched in stone.
They'll have tattoos of it already.
Right. So the other members of the team, I mentioned Susan Gillespie, who is the president of Mid-Hudson Energy Transition. One of our working partners from Kingston is Communities for Local Power. And Susan is the past president and now I think vice president of CLP. She's also on the Rosendale, kick me up again, Conservation Advisory Council. And then we've got Dana Hall with us, who you can see in the picture right there. Hi, Dana. Dana is our secretary and general counsel. And we have several other board members who bring specific expertise in energy conservation, building specialties, and in renewable energy, who are not with us today, but who are on our board. And our website, I think, is on the flyer that you have there. And you can look at that in terms of the bios. And in fact, I do have the bios of the other members of the team as one of the pages in the presentation. So let's move on, assuming we'll see that to. So what we want to talk about today, and by the way, Julie, how long do we have?
I would say half an hour.
Okay. Hopefully we can give less time than that unless you ask lots of questions. So what is CCA and how does it work? Where did CCA come from and where is it around the country? What is advanced CCA or CCA 3.0? Why do we call it a better model? Kingston Community Energy. What is Kingston Community Energy? As you've seen from the logo, just under the word Kingston, it actually says Community Energy, a little difficult to see here, but Kingston Community Energy is the name of Kingston CCA. What the timeline is for the adoption of the CCA and what impacts that will have, and then any questions that you might all have. And let me ask the other members of my team if they've got anything else they want to add before we start working through it. Susan, Dana, Marcy?
To say that Marcy, among her other valuable qualities that she brings to this conversation, is also our acting executive director.
And we have an office in Kingston, right next to the old Dutch church in the Ulster Savings Bank building. We haven't yet taken possession, but we've paid our security deposit and we're waiting for the landlord to paint and put some new flooring down, and we'll be moving right in there.
Nice.
So Marcy will be spending some of her time in Kingston. We're also going to be looking for an office manager, right, Marcy, and any
Yes.
other team members. Or we'll see as we move forward on exactly what we're going to need.
Yes, and our office manager will also help with digital marketing as well.
Great.
And staff.
Go ahead. This is interactive. We're practicing.
Susan, do you want to talk a little bit about our field staff? We're going to be hiring 3 field staff members to help with our public outreach. So we're looking for local community members. So if anybody knows of somebody looking for an office manager job or boots on the ground, please send them our way. We'll be posting those job descriptions soon, I would think within a week or 2.
Marcy, this is Helen Atkinson here. You should post them at co-work space at the Senate, above the Senate garage.
Okay.
Right. If you want to send me anything, I will make sure it gets up there because that's got good traffic.
Great.
Temporary workers and various people.
Maybe I'll just say quickly about the field staff, that we hope these are part-time hourly positions, and could easily be done in addition to another job. The time is very flexible, but what we're looking for there is people who really know the members of the communities that we want to reach. So, you know, Spanish speaking, diverse group of people who will be able to do this, and it'll be well paid, I think. So that'll be quite attractive. So keep your eye out for that, and for anybody you think would be suitable and interested, we'll train them.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Marcy. I do want to emphasize that we want not just this discussion to be interactive, but the whole point of having a not-for-profit that's in the community is that so we're part of the community, talking with the community, all elements of the community, because we want to be totally embedded in the community and doing what the community wants. So we want all your ideas and contacts and folks that we should be talking to or you'll be talking to on behalf of the CAC, but we really want this to be as interactive as possible because we want the community to be very involved in saying, this is good for us, this is not so good for us, this is what we like to do, that's more important, that's less important. So we really want to hear that, those kind of messages coming back to any of us so that we can make our direction go appropriately accordingly. That makes sense? Right. So what is CCA? And you probably all know this, although I think the Climate Smart Kingston is more directly involved in the CCA as part of the Climate Action Plan. But I know that I'm the co-chair of the Town of Olive's CAC, so I have some background in CAC. And in Olive, because we're a town, we do everything, both all the Climate Smart stuff and the CAC, so everything's squished together. So we did our own local law a couple of years ago. And so we have some relation. We've interviewed the other CCA administrators in Olive, and we basically said we're going to hold out and wait until we see what Kingston does, because they like the idea of CCA 3.0 a lot better than we do some of the earlier versions of CCA. So what is CCA? In its kind of original incarnation, essentially it means that the city, town, makes a purchasing decision for its energy supply or citizens, residents, small businesses energy supply on behalf of those residents and small businesses. So instead of entrusting it, in our case, to Central Hudson, the municipality says, this is what we want. We want, for example, 100% New York green energy, if we can get it. Or we want a combination of whatever we can get at a reasonable price, or we may want a couple of different things in terms of the bulk energy supply. And Central Hudson buys energy in the market. They don't say specifically what their energy mix is, but we've heard that it's about 85% brown coal, natural gas, oil, and 15% renewables, mostly New York State hydro and some wind. Kingston has told us that they want us to focus on 100% renewables. We're totally in line with that. We would like to help Kingston decarbonize its energy supply and then eventually decarbonize its buildings, its transportation, so that we're none of us rely on fossil fuels.
Simon, sorry, can I just ask, what's the leverage with Central Hudson then? What's the power to force this situation to change?
As the municipality has the right to essentially tell Central Hudson, we're taking over the energy supply decision. We'll decide who is going to be the supplier of the energy to all our residents and small businesses. And their obligation is to purely pass energy costs through. The utilities in general are not also the generators. So they're just passing the cost of what energy they buy. So they don't care, which means that they also don't have a lot of interest in the purchasing decision.
Right.
And that's why Having said that, the resident or small business can also decide, we've already got an energy supply company that provides our electricity. We're happy with the folks we have, and we can opt out of signing up for the CCA. So everyone has the option at their decision at absolutely no cost to either stay with whoever provides their energy today, which could be the utility, or could be an energy supply company, or to choose someone else. That's everyone's decision. It's up to them. Typically, when CCAs have gone into operation, they've managed to keep between 85 to 95% of the energy supply across the population. So typically, people go with whatever happens to them rather than saying, I want to make an affirmative decision to opt out.
Sure.
Dana, you had something to contribute?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, to answer the question that was asked, that the reason that cities can do this is because the Public Service Commission issued an order back in 2016, which requires the utilities to facilitate this program. So, so yeah, statewide, all the joint utilities have to offer this.
I'm sure they're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. So basically Central Hudson, let me just get this straight. Central Hudson maintains the pipes, as it were, and then you get to choose where the water comes from.
Exactly. It's a very good analogy.
All right.
Yeah.
Dana, anything else?
Nope.
I have a question.
Yes.
We're considering putting solar in the new, on the new house.
Right.
So where do we fit into
So that's a
this?
great question.
So the solar, the amount of solar that you put on your house should reduce how much energy you need to buy from outside.
Okay.
But it doesn't change who would supply that energy from outside. So you might buy less of it, but you still get to choose who your energy supplier is from outside.
Okay.
So if you may decide to stick with the utility, you will automatically be enrolled in the CCA for the energy supply side, but you'll be using less of it because you're generating yourself. The one complication is community solar. If you already have solar on your rooftop, you're not allowed to do both community solar and have solar on your rooftop. You're not allowed to essentially have two forms of solar on one account. That's a complication that we can get into if you want to, but it's adding a level of complication.
Okay.
But in general, the bulk supply part of the CCA, wherever the supply comes from, you can choose whoever that might be, whether or not you've got solar on your roof.
Okay.
Marcy, do you want to add to that?
Dana's coming over here to sit next to me. Here she comes.
Just to add to that answer is when you put solar panels on your roof, you're only taking electricity from your own generation during the daytime. At the night, you're still taking power from the grid. So it's that power from the grid that would be fed from this alternate supply contract from 100% renewable. So that's why people who have solar in their homes, this is still a benefit to them.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to play devil's advocate here on time, Simon, we're 10 minutes in and you're on slide 1.
Remember, this is a guinea pig.
One is a guinea pig, and two, I'd rather make sure we deal with the questions as we go. And they've got a handout, they've got access to the website, the Engage Kingston website has a lot of information on it. So even if we don't cover everything, there's a lot of materials already available out there. And Julie's name is on the end of this to respond to any question.
So, by the way, this never has their name on it. It says, am I missing something? Or is it
Nope.
someone?
That's what we're looking for.
Okay,
All right.
yeah, it never says anything about this.
Absolutely. As long as Julie's name.
What is the size of small business?
Anyone that does not have a demand charge.
Oh,
So I'm not sure whether you guys know the technical thing, but essentially businesses of a certain size pay an amount based upon the maximum amount of power that the utility has to be prepared to provide. That's a very important consideration large customers such as bus depots, which are in the process of moving their fleets from, say, diesel to electric, because as I think Ulster County found out when it switched some of its buses, it was paying more electric supply charges than it was in diesel because of the demand charges. So it's something you have to be very careful about for a business or a not-for-profit or a school or whatever of a certain size, is how you figure out what your maximum demand is, because utility really gets you based on demand charges. Demand charges are a critical part of planning for electrical infrastructure. Okay.
Marcy, are you taking note of the questions to add to the FAQ?
I got a couple of them. Yes.
Okay, I'll do the same.
Thank you. I might have missed a couple. It's harder to hear over here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we talked about what CCA is, and on the right side of the picture there, you've got, so that the key thing is you can, because we're buying bulk energy on your behalf, so we should be able to secure, not necessarily lower all the year round, because Central Hudson's rate over the last year has ranged from 21 cents in January to 4 cents in May and June, back up to 15 cents now. And the typical CCA rates when they were bulk buying power were in the 6 to 8 cent range. So over the course of the year, it may well work out more cheaper than the utility, but not all the time of the year. And that's an important consideration when we get to talking about low, moderate income customers, assisted program participants, so-called heat customers, because we'll get into that when we get to it. You get more control. The municipality is making a decision about who's providing the energy. We want 100% green. We don't want what the utility gives us that we have no choice over. We talked about renewables, and then to that, and we'll talk more about this when we get to CCA 3.0, and that I think we believe was part of the reason that we were really pushing on Kingston hiring us, because we want to take CCA well beyond where it has been before to increase what we can do in buildings and transportation to what's so-called beneficial electrification. So adding, making buildings more energy efficient so they're more comfortable, they're not as expensive to heat or cool, and then bringing in energy efficient appliances such as air source heat pumps, etc. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Marcy, she's not listening. So how community choice aggregation works. I don't think we really need to go through much, but essentially it's, as Helen was saying, clean energy is generated on the left, it's sent to the grid. The CCA bulk buys the energy at the low rates, and it's delivered by Central Hudson. So it's the pipes and water, just as Helen suggested. History of CCA, originally enacted in Massachusetts at Cape Light. In New York, the Public Service Commission did what they termed an experiment back in 2016. They said, we'd like to try this in New York, and the Sustainable Westchester got a group of Westchester municipalities together. It was done with a for-profit administrator at the time. And then when that contract was up, Sustainable Westchester decided to run it themselves through an organization similar to the Mid-Hudson Energy Transition. So we have a model for what has worked and is working in New York. A number of states allow CCAs, mostly in the Northeast and Midwest. California, however, is by far the biggest. Something like 25% of residences and small businesses in California are in a CCA. So some of their CCAs are huge, and they bulk buy, under long-term contracts, large amounts of renewable power, wind and solar, from large-scale, hundreds of megawatts renewable energy installations. And that's something that we, over time, would like to do in New York, because it makes logical sense to buy from New York installations where we have. And as it says at the bottom, states with deregulated energy markets can have CCAs. So if for some reason the utility, like Florida, has essentially an iron grip on the state, then it's very difficult for CCAs because the utility controls what goes on. And in many cases, in many states, the utility, unlike New York, has generation as well as the distribution. So they're in the business of generating the power. They don't want someone else to do it. Who has a CCA program around here? You've probably seen that Hudson Valley Community Power encompasses most, not all, but most of those names on the list. So there's quite a number of folks in the area that were in the Hudson Valley Community Power. That CCA's contract came to an end. We'll talk about that if that's a question. But the administrator for that CCA is going back into the business of getting a new energy supply agreement sometime next year. Advanced CCA, CCA 3.0 as we call it. The original CCA 1.0 is the bulk purchase of power. California is essentially where CCA 2.0 is, which adds the local renewable energy supply I mentioned. 3.0 adds DERs and building decarbonization, distributed energy resources. And that's a term of art. I'm not sure we need to have it in here, and that's interesting to see what you guys think. That complicates life, and we should come up with another term, but that's the sort of term of art, and that means anything that generates or uses electricity, any kind of energy resource. Could be the solar on Anissa's roof, it could be an air source heat pump or ground source heat pump, or some kind of it could be your Ford F-150 Lightning battery that powers your house when the power goes out. It could be any number of energy resources. And as we say in the end there, providing ownership opportunities to community members. And we'll talk a bit about that later, because part of what we're doing on the building side, or whether you've all seen what the city of Ithaca has been doing. The city of Ithaca has proposed a very significant building decarbonization across their entire building stock. They've raised from the private sector $100 million and hired a private sector company to essentially do their building decarbonization for them. We think that the not-for-profit model brings it back more into the community than hiring an outside profit company, but it's another way of doing it, and it goes certainly ahead of the game when it comes to raising the money to be able to decarbonize buildings and provide low-cost loans to do that, which we'll talk about ownership opportunities, because that's not just the people who own the buildings, but also the folks who live in the buildings. So renters need to have quote, ownership of what's going on with decarbonizing buildings, making them more energy efficient.
Marcy has a question.
Marcy, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to just jump in. So I am curious because, you know, this is a great experiment for us to talk to you guys as sort of our first presentation to our stakeholders in Kingston. And I'm just curious, how many of you have ever heard of that acronym DER? Anybody? I can't see. So what I would want to add to what you said about it, Simon. I think you did a great explanation that it really can be any kind of energy resource, but I want to talk about the D part, the distributed word. So if any of you guys have learned anything about the electric grid, there's really two kinds of grids. There's the distribution grid and the transmission grid. The transmission grid is very large scale, large voltage power lines that deliver large amounts of electricity from distant sources, but the distribution grid is what steps down the power from power stations to homes and businesses. So DERs are energy resources that are connected at that distribution level. And so, you know, a lot of us in the energy sector, we have a million acronyms. I suppose every industry has their acronyms, but this is an important one. And I don't know if that helps to understand where the D comes from. But for me, when I was first learning about the industry, that made a lot of sense because it's distributed, it's spread out around the city. It's not just one big central station power system. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Dana. Questions?
I would just, sorry, the loudmouth here. I would say that most people have no desire whatsoever to understand how the electricity comes into their home, and you're going to be doing a huge uphill battle to get distributed as opposed to transmission. I don't think for the purposes of this that it's particularly important. What I would like to see that third point be, and it is kind of buried in there somewhere, is that it's about reducing the amount of energy that you need, and that it's a two-pronged approach to switch to green energy, to renewable energy, but also reduce the overall amount of energy that's being used. Is that correct, that that's what the 3.0?
It is, and in fact, the second part has to precede the first part, because until you've properly insulated, Marcy is a certified building inspector, so she goes around and inspects buildings to see what needs to be done to make them more energy efficient, keep them warmer or cooler. You need to do that first, because until you've done that, you don't know what the real energy needs are.
Right.
Then you can say, okay, now I can size the energy load for my newly upgraded building. Marcy, I probably didn't say that nearly as well as you would, but
It's fine.
Yeah.
But yes, that's correct, Simon. You have to know what you have to know where you're going.
Right, to reduce. I mean,
Yeah.
just like the 3 Rs, reduce, reuse, recycle, reduce is the first one. And that's a really good point to make. I would also add, though, that energy resources are not necessarily limited to generation resources. There's storage. So whether it's battery storage or other storage systems, and things like microgrids, which provide reliability, where you have a generation source and a storage system linked in a wire directly connected to the building load or the factory or the hospital or whatever it is that is using that energy. That allows it to be grid independent in case the grid goes down. Critical infrastructure can continue to operate with a microgrid. That's another example of a DER. So we should try to work on this third bullet calls it innovative clean technologies. It is a broader spectrum than just generation resources.
okay, so Emily.
I would just take that one slide that showed the source and then the houses over there on the right. First of all, I'd put it on this slide, on this thing, because that illustrates
That
what
one?
CCA is.
No, the
And then, no, the
It'll
one
come back
that's
in a minute, sorry.
It's a little
It's slow.
flow diagram. And maybe you could put DERs in there somewhere. Awesome.
That's a really good idea in that graphic where you show the wire system and the little buildings and
so
things.
add
Yeah, I
DERs into
like
that.
that idea.
So this is cycling back to that diagram?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
Now it's going to cycle back to where we were.
so there's room to put it in at step 1, I guess, or wherever. But I just coming from a family of engineers, I know what it's like to try and explain. Nobody's interested in how their plumbing works or how electricity comes into their house, or, I mean, I'm sorry, I wish they were, because I know how it works, but to me, the important thing about 3.0 is that you're looking to reduce the amount of energy used as well. Because plenty of people have concern, I think increasingly now, with all the publicity about lithium batteries exploding and cobalt being mined by children in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Green energy is not a slam dunk. Like, it's not like, oh, great, we can use all the energy we want now. It's wind power, you know. I mean, it still requires batteries and all sorts of things that are not great for the environment. So to me, the emphasis on reducing usage is also very important. And my understanding is that that's kind of what's added into the mix with the 3.0.
That's a very good point, Marcy. We should make sure that we focus on that reduce first. Okay, so Kingston Community Energy, the point of all this is to do, as you can see up in the top right, the Kingston Action Plan was essentially the foundation for all this. And in the Cabinet's report, CCA was front and center as being one of the important things that Kingston wanted to do. And Julie and her team have got the local law passed, have got the mayor and his team to put together the RFP, and we've now selected administrators. So we're well on the way. We'll talk about the timeline, but we are actually putting into action what the city said we want to do. How am I doing for time, Marcy, since you're the timekeeper?
We are at 26 minutes.
Okay, 4 to go. So that's the key point here, is that we're actually helping the city put into action its plan. And we talked about increasing renewables. We talked about reducing or divesting from the fossil fuel industry. We want to decarbonize and electrify the buildings. And as Dana talked about, the DERs. So let's move on. Otherwise we'll run out of time. I mentioned to you low-income households Because for us, that helps to bring an equitable energy transition to all City of Kingston renters. That includes both renters and heat recipients, the assisted program recipients. We believe that by helping people insulate and improve their buildings, that improves the value of both their building, and to the extent that you're a renter and it's being done in your building, you should have some participation in that, and we're working through how to best make that happen. We clearly want people to, at this stage, the DER elements are not going to be forced on everyone. People will have to choose to say, we want to put in a battery as backup. We want to insulate, we want to put new windows in. Our aim is to provide them the means to do that, both in terms of education about what's involved. Marcy's, as we said, a sustainable building expert. We want to put financing programs in place, which could be all the way from grants to the lowest income folks to low-cost loans for people on higher income, so we means tested in some fashion. And we have already got a grant from the Nova Foundation, who I'm sure all of you know, and they're involved in Kingston. So they provided us an operating grant, but we also are expecting Novo to provide capital grants. And in addition to Novo, there are other grant sources that are available to have been used by other CCAs around the country. So we plan to broaden where we go. We've already had an initial interest from a large for-profit financial group, who's the same group that's financing the city of Ithaca with their building decarbonization, doing that here. So that gets us an initial commitment of $30 million. Wow. So we're sort of on the road to putting all the programs in place in parallel. And we need to keep this going as a parallel process. I talked about the low interest revolving fund. So since I've now run out of time, I will jump on. So it's a collaborative effort. As I said at the beginning, we're really looking for everyone's input. Ulster County was part of the RFP process, and Susan and I were part of the Ulster County Climate Smart Working Group, so they've been very involved. Susan?
Yeah.
All right, go Susan.
Yeah, I want to take the opportunity to talk for a minute here about the Community Advisory Board, right? We're going to put out a call for all of you and others to suggest people who might like to serve in that capacity. The board itself will decide how often it meets. It won't be, constant, but we really want to be sure that we have an ongoing conversation with people like you and others whom you might be willing to recommend or put us in touch with. So please keep that in mind. We're thinking community leaders, people who have some stature in the community, and just ordinary folks who want to do this, who get that it's important, and understand the strategic value of it for them and people like them. So please help us think about that. And if any of you are interested, let us know.
And as I mentioned earlier, Susan comes from Communities for Local Power, having been its past president. Our other partner locally is New Yorkers for Clean Power, whose offices on Broadway, and they've been involved in part of the conversations to get this started as well. And I mentioned Nova as well. Okay, timeline. So we started October 26th with the official announcement of us being selected. We are involved in stakeholder engagement and education. We will be filing our implementation plan when the Public Service Commission, the PSC, gets its act together around including community energy, community solar in the, we decided not to file the implementation plan until that's been approved. It was previously approved. They put a moratorium on it for a while. We're expecting that that moratorium will be lifted either by the end of this year or early next year, but the implementation plan has to be different depending on how community solar is involved. Susan just talked about the CCA advisory board. We will have to adjust the local law or opt out CDG, that's the community solar, but that will all happen once the Public Service Commission has given this approval. As we get into early next year, we'll be working on requests for proposals for the bulk energy, and we'll be looking at large-scale purchasing or ability to get things like air source heat pumps and the like. There'll be a public outreach period, which is mandated by the Public Service Commission before we go to the market for getting the bulk energy supply. So everyone's got to be, I think there's 1 or 2 postcards that have to be sent out. The website has to be, there'll be a specific CCA for Kingston website. We'll be working, as I said earlier, on the revolving loan fund. Then as we get into the launch, middle of next year, we will get responses to the RFP. We will choose 1 or more suppliers of the bulk power. We'll be working with solar developers through our partners at Power Market, who are our technical advisor on bringing in solar developers who've developed local solar fields that we can use for community solar. There'll be a mail notification of that to everyone. And then once we launch, essentially everyone that doesn't opt out will be opted into that supply contract. You won't, it'll be the same as you have now. It'll be on the Central Hudson bill. Instead of Central Hudson providing the energy supply, it'll be supplied by whoever we choose as the energy supply. What have I missed in that timeline there, ladies?
It looks good. The only thing I would just say about the timeline is that it is a living, breathing timeline, and there are a lot of things that have to happen at certain points for us to stay on that trajectory. So it is subject to change. Don't necessarily hold us to it, but that's what we would like to do.
Okay, that brings me to the end. So we were a few minutes late, and I apologize for that. Questions?
I'm going to ask a really hard one. How do we know that you're going to be able to carry this out and it's not all going to crash and burn like just happened for all these other communities?
Well, interesting you mentioned the point about what happened. I'm going to bring it. It'll come up in a minute. There we go. So the energy, what happened with the dual-led supply contract was that they selected an energy supply company that did not maintain its creditworthiness with the public, so with the New York system operator that essentially operates the transmission lines, and they were denied access to the transmission system. So basically, they had no choice but to go back to the default energy supply, which is the utility.
Where was it?
Right here.
Okay.
An energy supplier is generally, Dana can speak to this more, but generally is approved to supply energy anywhere in New York. And there are other bigger energy suppliers that can do in many states. The one that we selected, or not we selected, selected by the other CCA administrator, had done previous work in Ohio and in New York, and they were selected as being the best deal for that particular CCA. And it turned out that they weren't creditworthy and they ceased operations in New York.
Yeah,
So that's one of the
all
key
those-
things
all
that we
those
have to do.
towns that were listed up on the slide,
Uh-huh.
they don't have CCA anymore.
Right, I see.
Yeah.
They have CCA, they don't have a supply.
Right.
They don't have a
Right.
supply.
So that's a very good point to make there, Emily, that careful evaluation and vetting of those energy supply companies is a crucial part of our job in advising the City of Kingston whether or not to accept a response to an RFP. Kingston, I'm sure, will do its own work, and we will do our work on due diligence on those energy suppliers, in particular, since we've seen what can happen.
Marcy?
Dana.
Yeah, so I'll add a couple of things. Another difference is because we're a not-for-profit organization with a fundamental goal of engaging and empowering the local community to make these choices, to be involved, we feel confident that our program won't just crash and burn. We're not an outsider coming in. We're here to create the tools and the pathways for all of these different programs. That's one element. Another element is that what happened with the Hudson Community Power contract was really just their supply contract. Our vision for CCA is much bigger than a supply contract. We do intend to implement that It is the item 1 in CCA 1.0, and we will start there. But we also have significant supply of community solar projects right in Central Hudson Territory that will be bidding on an opportunity to put community solar into our program. And we have our carbon reduction decarbonization programs that we intend to launch, which we've been talking about. So our goal is that there's a graphic that isn't in this slide, but it's on the Engage Kingston website, which shows that the largest portion of the contribution to emission sources comes from the building sector. What was it, 32%? 32%, 24, I think, from transportation, and only 13 from electricity. So to focus on the supply contract and think that you're going to make meaningful changes is not what we believe. We want to focus on that reduction. And that's why what happened with this supply contract in our neighboring CCA to us is of less concern. Of course, we will take everything that's on the screen here, careful vetting, having new contract provisions that would cause penalties on ESCO for behaving badly. We'll make sure those things are in a supply contract, but it will become less important because we're going to be rooted in the community and focusing on reducing consumption and improving people's homes and the healthier homes and all of these other things that we want to do.
Okay. So how are you working? I mean, you're not the only game in town for those things. So how are you working in tandem with the other efforts in this area to reduce energy consumption, make buildings more energy efficient, et cetera, because there are several initiatives that
quite address the question directly. I think, it is possible that other municipalities will join with Kingston. Maybe not right away, but we know there are other communities that are interested in this model.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about other organizations and efforts to reduce energy consumption and providing grants for making buildings and homes more energy efficient.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, there is money out there for these things.
Right.
And one of the things we will do is make sure that our staff is available to help people through the process, because there's money out there for these things, but the application process is a bear.
Yeah. And those actors who are doing that work are not doing it on a municipal wide scale like we're envisioning. And maybe I'd turn the question back to Julie. Did anybody else bid on this RFP that had this building decarbonization focus? I mean, maybe you can't answer that with us on the line, I don't know, but.
Everybody else with that?
So I think the question that I heard, and I'm sorry, can you say your name again, the woman who asked the question?
Helen Atkinson.
Yeah, so Helen, there are lots of different companies that do this work, but I don't think any of them approached Kingston to be an administrator on a citywide level of that kind of program. So if you wanted to go with somebody else to do that stuff, you'd have to do a lot more work to do that coordination, put all that program together. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but.
No, but yeah, I think what she's saying is like Sustainable Hudson Valley has done Smart Heat Smart, or Rubco used to do the energy conservation, now Cornell Cooperative Extension is, and they're all, and a lot of it has to do with NYSERDA funding.
And our job is to coordinate all of those efforts. So
Oh, really?
everything's
Great. I wish somebody would. Yeah,
Well,
that's
and
right.
it won't be an easy thing to do because
No,
everyone's got
no.
their own agendas.
Right, okay.
So,
All right, yeah, but that's thank you. That's what I want to know. So basically, you're going to be sitting hopefully at the top of the pyramid, coordinating all these other efforts.
right, and Susan's got a huge amount of experience in that because municipal local power has been doing the workforce development already in the community, so knows a lot of the players, and it's our job is to coordinate with all those players, the Rutgers, as we mentioned, and others,
Right.
to make sure that we're all doing the same thing, and some people have got specific expertise. Marcy.
Yes, so I want to talk to this point because this is my passion, and I get to be the one who along with finding out who else is doing this, so Massachusetts is building a pathway to decarbonization. And what we are hoping to do is to be an energy concierge service. So if we have somebody in the city of Kingston says, I want to decarbonize and electrify my home, great, come to us. Let's
Right.
have an initial conversation. Let's do an assessment on your home. Let's work with contractors in the area who are already doing this work. Let's look at all the different financial incentives that you might, be applicable, such as the funding that's in the IRA. NYSERDA has a bunch of different programs. There's the Clean Heat Rebate Program, and help people through that process and project manage their decarbonization and electrification, because just for somebody to go out and do it on their own, it's overwhelming. There's too much, and we need to guide people in order for this to be successful. So we'll guide them through the process. We'll get the work done. We'll follow up with them when the work is finished. We'll install energy monitoring systems so they can see how their energy is being reduced. We're planning to have a computer-based dashboard where they can monitor almost in real time what's happening with their home, because we want to know the work that we're doing is actually making a difference. And that's going to be kind of a QA, a quality assurance for what we're doing. So yeah, there are people out there doing it. Energy Conservation Services, great friends of mine, they're doing work. Global Dwelling, they're doing the work, but nobody's doing it as a concierge service from start to finish and beyond. And that's
Well, and the point here, I think, is that we want to do it together,
yes.
right? We have to be clear about building a coalition. This MHET comes out of Communities for Local Power. We have ties to quite a number of local organizations, working quite closely with New Yorkers for Clean Power, which does some of these things. Very active, in terms of Heat Smart and that. We want to fit in and help everybody do a better job. I don't think we're competitive. So we'd be happy to have people do some of this work, right? It's just a matter of getting everybody aligned and looking in the same direction and working well together.
We gotta finish up, but I'm gonna ask one more question. So what is your income based on besides some grants?
It's funny enough.
For that.
So we do not get any money at all from the city of Kingston, zero. We get a very, very small amount out of the bulk supply contract. And then we also get paid by the solar developers who are building community solar projects, both an initial upfront payment for bringing them on board to the city of Kingston CCA and on a regular annual fee basis. So if you look at it as essentially the consumer is paying, because the consumer always pays. So if the supply contract is at 8 cents, we get 0.02 cents. So the total might be 8.02 and we get the 0.02 per kilowatt hour.
Simon, the slide is not showing for that.
I know, that's because I unshared my screen before I said that.
Okay, there's one other thing that I would add in terms of sources of revenue to fund Mid-Hudson energy transition operations. We do have a grant from the Novo Foundation for our first year of operation, but also for some of the things that we want to do, demonstration projects, studies. We plan to go to market to government sources to see if we can get matching funds for more funding. So NYSERDA, the US Department of Energy, there may be other places that we can go to. And we want to build ongoing relationships with more foundations. If our program grows beyond Kingston, Novo is committed to Kingston, but we would want to find some other funders that would support other activities in other places as well. So we do continue and will be committed to not asking the city of Kingston for any kind of funding for our activities.
Just as an example, the city of Menlo Park in California, so home of venture capital, is working on a program like the city of Ithaca. They've got something called Menlo Spark, which is raising $35 million for heat pumps and the like. And the Bezos, Jeff Bezos' Earth Fund, is also putting together a grant program. So those are the kinds
So
of
the
foundations.
models that you like are Menlo Park and Ithaca at this point.
And Saratoga is talking about something similar to this.
Has anybody actually achieved what you're envisioning with this energy concierge service? Has anybody even come close to it yet?
I would say it's beginning in Ithaca, but it's very early stages.
Okay.
And Massachusetts is working on it too. Look, nobody's done this before.
Right.
We're kind of like building the ship as we're trying to also fly it or steer it. So it's, you know,
It's exciting.
it's exciting. It's going to be a lot of work. We know that, but there's a lot of people that realize this is the answer to the problem.
Yeah,
And
it's fantastic.
yeah, so, and we're keeping our eyes out and in touch with people that are doing it across the United States.
And,
So,
and the city of Kingston has been a leader in this space.
yeah.
So by choosing our approach, we feel that this just continues Kingston's leadership, and we hope to be able to facilitate Kingston as a model for the world.
That sounds great. What about Europe? Have you looked at any parallels?
We've looked conceptually at what's going on with things like geothermal heat loops. They're very popular in Scandinavia, Canada as well. So it's well suited for semi-northern climes, which we're kind of right on the edge of. So that's an area that we are looking at. You may have heard that just nearby, Woodstock is looking at geothermal heat loops.
But I'm talking more about the model for this sort of centralized energy concierge, community action. Is there isn't anything, you'd have thought there'd be something in Sweden or something.
What is that? So we're looking for as much advice, ideas, etc., or suggestions that you can find. So to the extent that you see or hear of anything, whether it's in Japan, Scandinavia, South America, wherever it might be, we're absolutely open to conversations.
Yes, we would definitely,
welcome that.
Definitely welcome your ideas and your hard questions.
Yeah.
Good, just as well.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Of course you did. Kingston.
Thank you,
Simon. Simon, that was fantastic. Sorry, my journalist.
Right. Thanks for asking all the questions, because hopefully we're going to continue to have you questions and all these things. But you guys can be proselytizers to the extent that you believe this in your part.
All right, absolutely.
I think it's the right thing to do.
Great.
So we're gonna have to move ahead because we only have 40 minutes. So one thing I want to make sure that, Brianna, that you interrupt us when we're using acronyms or if you don't understand something. This is not a test, we want, because we're just gonna move. Anyway, like today, like there were lots of acronyms in there that we didn't even know, so.
Thank you.
Tell Dana to hang up. Tell Dana to hang up. Unless she wants to stay. Can you just text her or something, tell her to leave? She's like, you don't have to do it right now. When do you want to hang out?
So, yeah, so I'm gonna just kind of figure out what's the priority for all of this. So I think we need to really talk about the Pace University. We need to talk about neonicotinoids. So that if we can just kind of move really fast through some of the other ones, so we can spend, I don't want to, anyone else who has something. So anything on wood smoke?
No, but I do need to be reminded what I said I was going to be doing about the leaf blows thing. Was I redrafting the, I'm so sorry.
I think, well, we needed to make
somebody
a phone,
else's
we
job.
need to call.
Sorry again.
I think we were gonna call the policeman and see if they could.
That's it, right.
Yeah, any
Right.
complaints about noise.
And about enforcement as well.
Enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then,
Oh, that's right, because Rhinebeck basically isn't enforcing because they put the decibel level too low.
yeah, and we just want to know, like,
Yeah,
if it's an issue, do they get complaints, what, just so we get something from the police.
super.
Okay.
Thank you.
Water quality, subcommittee. I assume we don't have anything on septic code, non-toxic landscaping plan. Julie, I think you have something on that, right?
That went to the council and it passed. Oh, what, did it go to the council yet?
I thought you said they cut out the sidewalk.
It did, they cut out the sidewalk section.
Yeah.
Did I update you guys on that already?
I think by,
I heard that.
yeah,
I think we heard it somewhere
I
else.
think it happened right
Yeah,
after
the
we
climate
had last met.
Okay.
You mentioned the climate.
So they-
Somebody mentioned it, somebody mentioned
Took that section out and moved it forward. And I guess they must have voted on
I
it by
think that
now.
was a Kingston Wire article, I read about it.
So
Okay.
does that mean that we still would be the advisory?
Yes,
whether or not
however, it now only just applies to city municipal operations. So it would be certainly less work on your part. But if a city department wanted to have a waiver on the process, it would still come to you.
Right. But private maintenance of sidewalks is not included.
Not included.
So you have to look at that another time.
And did they just, was there a lot of discussion or did they just?
There was a lot of discussion. There were some in favor, some against in terms of discussion. It ultimately came down to them saying that it was not enforceable and that it was cost prohibitive. I felt differently, but I don't vote, so.
Well, there's more than one way to go back.
Well, we could always bring it up in a year or two.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
certainly can do education about it as well. Just
Yeah.
because there's not a law doesn't mean that people we
Right,
still can't
exactly.
educate people to not do it.
Yeah, and I was trying to find a copy of that. For Brianna, but
I don't have it.
we'll-
I will.
Oh, right, figure it, yeah. Okay. Open space planning, okay.
The community preservation plan is in development. Right now, we're expecting to have a draft out at the end of before the end of the year. And so I will keep you posted when it is available for you all to review the draft.
Kingston forward citywide zoning. Okay, so, in terms of that, like, I feel like we had a really busy October. Because there were all these meetings and stuff, so we met, Kevin, and so on September 30th, we submitted our comments. And then it turned out that we had a little more time, so we submitted three additional comments or something by email. And then Kevin and I met, was it Kevin and I only? And we met with Bartek and the consultants, and they went over some concerns we had. And the biggest one is, for mine, was that they were using this term called open space, that we didn't like the term open space. And we agreed on one term, and then they emailed us in the last week and suggested another term instead. So.
Oh, yes, I saw the traffic about this, yeah.
Yeah, and so then I finally looked and I finally read it through, and it still just seems really confusing. And I think it might be just a matter of reviewing their document and just editing it for them or something. But, so remind me what we decided on. They decided that they liked usable open spaces.
Yeah.
But we decided that we wanted privately owned open space. So just, Brianna, for your information, for everyone else, there is a requirement. There's a requirement that if you have a building development that's 5,000 square feet or more, you have to have 10% of the land have some kind of green space. Something where you can sit down, or playground, or community garden, or trail, or something like that. And the problem I felt was that they were using this term open space, which is in conflict with the CAC's open space plan, because it's a different kind of open space, and also with the community preservation plan and everything. So,
I mean, forgive me, I'm, word nerd, but open space could be a parking lot.
yeah,
I mean, how do we embed in it the concept of it being organic matter or whatever? I mean, it's,
yeah,
because that's what you mean. You want something with grass and trees.
right. And it turned out I went back to look at our open space plan, and we never defined open space.
Right.
And yeah, and also, like, if you read something like years ago, one of our documents that we've read, it was written a long time ago, was from Department of State, and they define open space, and they define it, even with urban forests, like, so it could be sidewalk trees and things like that.
Right.
But we just didn't want to use the term open space. So then we decided that, I think someone looked up New York City's, and they use privately owned open space or private open space. And
That could still be a private park.
yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. And also they said that in the industry of planning, open space is used for what, they're calling. So there's these pictures in the rezoning, and they define squares and squares and plazas and pocket parks and trails and parks and greens and all of these things. And I think, so they wanted to use the term, as I said, private open space, but then, so they sent us a revised copy, but then, like, the top is open space, and then the next thing is open space. And then, so I think part of it is that it's just not written to distinguish for when it's a private situation versus, if the city of Kingston wants is lucky enough to get a new parkland, they could also follow this design, right? And then it would be open space. Public open space.
I suppose the issue with it, adding the word private, I suppose the impetus for that is that you could build a massive office complex that happened to be next to a public park and go, well, look, there's your open space in our building. So I guess it makes sense to define it as being private, but I still think, and I'm sorry, I'm coming late to this. I know I've been watching the traffic going back and forth, but I haven't really participated. Is there a better term to come up with so that it specifies that it has to be something other than asphalt?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It says it has to be green. It has to be green, it has to be trees. It can be, then they also use the term. So they use usable open space because the reason they're using it open space usable is because if you have a piece of property that has like really steep slopes and a floodplain, they don't count towards
Right.
so there's like, they don't count towards the usable. Okay.
Well, what's wrong with green space? That's a
They
pretty
didn't like that either. They,
term, isn't it?
It does seem.
no, we walked away
What
from
about
that.
recreational space? I guess that could be enclosed.
So the enclosed is, they allow enclosed for, so I think that Kevin and I maybe are something just, I didn't reply because I didn't have time to. But I think we just need to figure out really what they're trying to say here, because they still use open space. And
It's challenging.
yeah,
Yeah.
and oh, and by the way, community gardens and playgrounds can have fences, but everything else is not supposed to be fenced 20% is supposed to be shaded, but that can be a structure, not trees.
Right.
And then, I don't know. So I think that's why they used usable, because usable is like, okay, you can't use a steep slope in the same way. You can't use a stream in the same way. You can't use a floodplain in the same way. So basically, if they're inaccessible, then you're not considered usable.
Fair enough.
But they're not, I like the idea. So some of them are required. The required part is if it's 5,000 square feet. But I guess the other design standards are for not required, but it's like too confusing. Okay, like it's, okay, this is required, and these are some design standards. Anyway, so Kevin, let's just try to figure out how to answer that
Yeah, we'll have to just
offline.
take a
Is that okay?
Yeah, I have it open, but they might have time to do this.
Yeah, I mean, they even go into whether or not the open space can be on the back of the building or in the front of the building.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that sometimes like maybe the back of the building would be a good idea. So like if you want the building to be up to the sidewalk, then.
Hey, what meeting are you looking for?
No, there's a hearing about the pilot for the Golden Hub.
Okay.
I thought it was for South 06.
Okay.
Oh, okay. All right, so I just wanted to, I don't want to take any more time on that, but that was.
Are we gonna have a chance to comment on the final draft?
I haven't watched the process. I think that I wouldn't even want to try it because I'm terrible, you
I
know?
think we do.
Yeah.
I think they're, project. I'm pretty sure that there'll be a,
And he didn't,
hearing and all of that.
he didn't give us a deadline to answer. And I think it's been like a week. And I
Yeah,
didn't
with
answer.
November 2nd, I put that in there.
Yeah, I didn't answer because
And it took them 2 weeks to figure it out. We met with them on October 19th. So.
Okay, so then city plan review is the next thing, Flatbush, Foxwell, any news on that?
No.
That wasn't on the list.
And nothing on,
It was, I have been checking it with Schultes, but he's,
Okay,
and he said he was gonna put me on the committee, but I've heard nothing.
oh, okay,
But basically, last time I spoke to him, he said, because they'd lost all these engineers and whatever, they were just beginning to ramp up again, so.
pedestrian bike master plan, nothing,
nothing from Emily Flynn.
okay.
We're waiting.
All right, so, New York, New Jersey harbor and tributaries,
I followed up on that, make that real fast. They're in tier 1, which under NEPA, they use tiers instead of phases. So they're doing phase, what effectively is a phase 1 at this point. And I don't think the upriver portions are going to be analyzed until tier 2 or phase 2.
Right.
They have to figure out what exactly out of their proposal is going to be acceptable, and it's going to end up being in the preferred alternative. They picked the preferred alternative, and it's got this small barriers here and there and everywhere, and a lot of seawalls and hard solutions, and a lot of deployable gates, all this sort of stuff. But how that affects the river coming up north. I haven't done that yet.
okay, so, yeah, so
Yeah,
just,
for this alternative, yeah,
Right.
right.
so this is called New York, New Jersey HATS, harbor and tributary. Harbor and tributary, okay, so. whatever.
That's easy for you to
HATS
say.
Studies, so basically, there was a lot of concern. This is how to prevent flooding in New York City, and they wanted to put an entire surge barrier across the Hudson, which then would have backed the Hudson up and flooded up and could potentially flood upstream. So they kind of backed off of that and coming up with smaller ways to protect.
The Thames flood barrier is a two-way thing, that's tidal. I know I keep saying, what about here?
No, they definitely looked at,
They built this 20 years ago and it works, you
The
know.
problem was they were gonna go from Rockaway to Sandy Hook, New Jersey out of the ocean.
Okay.
What's
because yours is,
Let's throw 30 billion in the ocean and see what happens. Yeah.
Okay.
because they did look at the towns.
Okay.
I went to a talk where they.
That's
they looked
considerably
at-
inland up here, so I mean, it's still
Yeah.
tidal, but
All
it's.
of these have induced flooding aspects.
Right.
And the question for us here is, are we in an induced flooding area in Roundup?
Right.
And
Yeah,
along Sojourner Tree Park? It says,
Yeah.
yeah. So they haven't determined that yet.
Right.
All right, well, thank you for keeping on that.
Yeah, I'll be
That's
following
really
it up.
interesting.
All right. So, the next one, I'm gonna have, Anita talk on neurotoxic neonate pesticides.
Okay, we were asked to join a lengthy list of people who are pushing to get this Birds and Bees Protection Act passed, which is basically to prohibit the use of neonicotinoids. It's a whole new class of pesticides. And we saw it first in bees, I think about 2000. I don't know if any of you remember colony collapse, but we started
It was
losing lots of
2003
bees.
was the big year.
Yeah, well, I guess I saw it sooner.
Right.
But it's a neurotoxic chemical. And this was brand new to me. It's impacting humans. You know, I guess no surprise. And probably all other higher organisms too, but particularly kids. It's getting into the water supply. Does not break down readily. So it washes into the water supply and gets into the groundwater. And I believe the figure was 50% of the people they tested showed signs of neonicotinoids in their body. If they were, that frightens the hell out of me. You know, we've got enough other pollution. And it was sort of the big deal, this brand new approach. And I don't think, in terms of pest control, I don't know that it really does anything that we didn't have something to do before. They're using, they coat seeds with it, but that doesn't really do much. But it becomes systemic in the plants. So then it gets out into the environment. No wonder we need to eat organic.
Yes.
So, and then of course it has an impact on pollination, which impacts fruits, nuts, seeds, vegetables, everything but grasses, basically, like corn and wheat. And impacts the quality or the extent of which fruits fly. And along the way, we're losing beekeepers too, because a bunch of them lost so many colonies. So I put this draft together. Helen had sent me a couple of comments, which is recent.
I already did, yeah.
Okay.
You should have it now.
Okay.
Right, and when I read it, I couldn't figure out if I was reading your track changes or your accepted changes, but it seemed fine to me.
Okay.
So,
Also, just looking here, New Jersey passed a widespread ban in January, which is kind of good.
and this already passed the House, but it
Yes.
didn't, the Assembly, but it didn't pass the Senate, so the idea was to rate Hinchey.
We need our gal, Michelle.
And since she got reelected last night.
Oh,
Yes, she did.
okay.
All right.
And
So
it
we-
didn't,
You can take my signs.
if I remember correctly, it didn't not passage, they just didn't get to it in their session last year.
Oh, okay, thanks for that.
Okay. Anyway, so we're gonna send that letter.
Yeah,
So can we, go ahead and, what do we need to do to say, okay, we're gonna
So
send it?
to approve the letter and to send it.
Okay,
I move
so
to approve the letter.
I second it.
Say it.
Okay, and I really do think Anita should sign it, because it looks so cool. When when she said retired, whatever you said.
Yes.
As opposed to me sending it. So, but you can put all their names on it.
Yes,
that's how
please.
I- Like I
okay,
have a format with the letterhead and everything,
okay.
and then should you?
Brianna, have you seen this letter? Do you, wait, what's your email address I sent to me?
Here you go.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. You are so.
Yeah, but her email is on there, it's Brianna.
Gary22@gmail.com.
Yes, Anita, you make a motion?
I mean, it's in
Yeah, I
our
will.
email.
Oh, it's not.
But first,
And you made a second, okay, that was like.
I wrote it, but so I didn't.
Yeah, so let me, so, like, get you a,
Yeah,
and then who should anyone be copied on it? Should we be copied?
You're gonna send it to Senator Hinchey,
Yeah,
CC. me.
okay. And then the NRDC or someone like that asked us to do it. Is there a group? Or should we, or we can just go?
I should CC them. I've talked to them, the National Resources Defense Council.
Okay, and anyway, this came about through something because they reached out to the EMC actually, but I moved it forward to us and the Environmental Management Council, and I didn't feel like, I feel like I didn't, does anyone need anyone to come and talk about it? Or can we send you an article or something? I just hate to have someone spend it. It's just-
They offered to come and speak to us, but
It's pretty seldom.
Yeah, I don't think I think they should spend their resources another way.
So it's going to Michelle Pinchy, you're getting a copy, and who else is getting a copy?
Julie, oh, Julie. Oh, NRDC.
NRDC.
Yeah, unless you want us to send it to the mayor or the county.
Send it to the mayor, but even if you don't, I'll send it to the mayor.
Okay.
okay.
All right, and then, okay, so thanks for doing that. Pace University Resilience Assessment, I'm gonna let Kevin talk about.
Okay, Anita, Ted, and I attended the PACE land use law training. And one of the things that came out of that was on the last day, there was a LWRP, that's a local waterfront revitalization plan that covers Rondout and the Hudson River area. And they approached us after this about Kingston and updating the LWRP, and they had done some initial rough-up work on this as well. Fortunately, they used the old zoning, even though one of the PACE people is assisting in writing the new zoning. So, but they have some money in a grant left over. I think it's from DLS, and I believe that's where it came from, to do more work on this. There was what's called the RISE assessment. That's an EPA, Environmental Protection Agency tool that we reviewed at the training. And that would basically lay the foundation for an LWRP update. Our LWRP dates from 1993 and it sorely needs to be updated. It doesn't include sea level rise. And a second discussion came out of that is under the new zoning, which board would review the LWRP. I think the options were this board and the planning board. The board that's currently doing it, the Hereditary Commission, may just be discontinued or something else might happen to that. So we have all discussed this with PACE recently. And I also spoke to Suzanne Cahill about it, planning, they got her take on it. I believe, is there a meeting of city staff on this? Suzanne thought there was going to be, but I don't know. She thought you had sent out a doodle poll. Okay, so I didn't see that doodle poll. I said, I'm not on it. Maybe it's just city staff.
I haven't talked to anyone about it.
Oh, okay. Suzanne made it sound as if, yeah, she might just be like looking at the community preservation plan. That's what I thought. So, are you sure you got the right doodle poll? So, yeah, well, that'll be continued. Let's not belabor that point. But yeah, Suzanne is sort of in the loop on this in terms of whether she and Kyla want planning to have that, or if other forces at play in City Hall want the CAC to take that over. So, you know, that's to be continued. That's a City Hall decision, not the CAC.
Yeah, so how is everything moving forward with pace? What do we need to do to move that forward?
Well, I think we should probably get back to them, tell them we're definitely interested in the RISE assessment and the, you know, whatever other analysis they're gonna do on the local waterfront. And then let them do their end of it, and then City Hall will figure out its end of it.
Okay.
Which will probably coincide, because I think that they're gonna be doing this sometime around the turn of the year, January.
Okay.
And Dover Cole maybe finishing the zoning at the same time, so we'll have a clearer picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't actually know what we're supposed to tell them, because there's one thing of just like, okay, they for free will do kind of initial step to start an LWRP, which then the city could, you know, apply for funding to get a more updated one. And they're not asking, the funding is through, it's left over from another town or something. So they just want to do it, really.
But there needs to be more than CAC to go ahead.
Right.
Like there needs to be.
Yes.
Either some department or administration needs to say yes.
Yeah, and I just wanted like a blurb to like even articulate what they were offering, and they never gave it to her. So I didn't,
Yeah, you can't just have them move ahead with starting on an LWRP without the mayor's okay with that.
Yeah, well, they kind of did it, presented it at the Hula training
Okay.
on their own, but like I said, they used the old zone.
yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
but if we're gonna do
Well,
more.
that was a student exercise.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that, just remember, that's the thing, that was a student exercise. They take all these
Yeah,
law students and they have them look at documents that the city has, but with no, like, oh, you know, we already did this, or we're doing this, you know, so the students use it, but this would be, you know, hopefully it would take into account.
And weren't we asked to come up with this as a fourth session? And we were supposed to drag somebody from the city administration?
they haven't
With us.
followed up on that fourth session. That was supposed to be in December. And it didn't come up during the discussion on the call, you know,
Yeah.
with Tiffany. And
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, and I just,
yes, you're
so
right.
what are the next, what do we do? We think, yeah, it would be great if they spent some money, if it doesn't take too much city time and that it's gonna be helpful, right? But what should we do? Should we have a meeting with Tiffany and Jessica again? Should we ask them to write something? What's the next step?
I mean, the mayor needs to be debriefed on it. So something needs to be written up to brief them on what's going on, and we need to know what they need from us to get the go ahead.
Okay. Right, do you
When I
want
do
to?
that,
I'd rather you do it.
yeah, okay, yeah, well, I was the initial contact with Ted, you know, so, I can, yeah, I'll get back to them and find out what they need from the city to proceed. I think that's it, right?
Okay, yeah. And I did ask, today I got from Tiffany, I got the Excel file as an Excel file, and I forgot to forward it, but anyway. So it's better to understand, that's all, okay?
Oh,
The
okay.
one that's, I think it's a
Yeah.
water gap. I was reading it on my phone, so. All right, so I'll forward that to you. Okay, next. Any other open issue discussions that we want to do now? Hearing nothing. All right, so then really, are there any communications? For announcements, I sent you this all last night because I wanted to let you know that this county is doing a natural resources inventory and for the county, and apparently they are going to take everyone else's work and kind of combine them. But if you are interested in knowing what a natural, what is proposed for the natural resources inventory, there is a public meeting this Monday on the 14th at 7 o'clock. It's in Rosendale. So if anyone wants to go and anyone else needs a ride, I'm thinking about going. And then there's a remote one on the same thing on Wednesday, the 16th. And I'm bringing this up, just because some of you weren't here when we did a natural resource inventory. You might want to learn more about it above and beyond what you've learned from Lula and so on. And also because it'll hopefully be using our information. And I sent you the link because everything is really just on a website. It wasn't even a poster, and you're supposed to register. So if you want to do that, please look into it. Okay, that's my one announcement. Any other announcements? Okay, the next one is I put in the Lula and the Hudson River Watershed Conference because I thought both of them would, if anyone wanted to kind of say anything about what they learned.
The Hudson River Watershed Alliance Conference was great. I went to all 3 days. Some of you went to a couple other days as well. I presented on the 3rd day for the wastewater treatment plant, which was the most people we've ever brought to the wastewater treatment plant ever. And it was fantastic and actually spurred an additional action because one of the people that attended noticed that we were flaring off our methane, and we have now had a 2-hour meeting to discuss how we can capture the biogas and recirculate it to make power. So there's certainly something fruitful that came out of that, but it was great to have so many people come to that. I was really impressed with the Watershed Alliance Conference as a whole. I think that it was extremely informative, better than what I expected. And so I was happy that I did.
Yeah, and I wanted to note, first of all, because we're in a drought, that there was, I can't remember who spoke, I'm bad at this, but there is a website called drought.gov, and it has data going back from to 1895. And it also covers excessive precipitation, but it also shows drought data. And then she also said that there's some data that goes back 1,000 years from paleo data to tell what drought is. So it's a pretty easy, so if you want, I haven't checked it out, but I thought that was really interesting. And heat is the biggest killer for above and beyond any things like storm surge and floods and everything. And I did notice that there, I also saw an announcement about Hudson River Estuary Program, I think, is putting out something about heat. And I got that today. And I just wanted to remind people that we did have a study, which we talked about last time, on heat island effects here in Kingston. And it's basically, it's hotter where there are no trees, that's kind of
Yeah.
obvious. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then this, My Coast they talked about My Coast, which is a project to observe flooding, right? It's a crowdsourced thing, so that you can check that out. That is part of Secret, yeah.
And that also spurred another action is that all of our city staff that are interested are now going to be trained on with the best sources of information are for flooding and for river flooding and for sea level rise predictions. So Jess Coonan from Sea Grant will be doing training just for city staff.
Oh, that's great. That's great because I also noticed that in this sea rise or whatever, they mentioned some things that were kind of out of date, like I mean, I thought that like coast would be one thing, but
Inland.
the flooding, the prediction that it happens with oh my God, what's the name? It's Stevens Institute. They have a really good model. It's most, and they do a little prediction. And during Superstorm Sandy, they actually, it's in Hoboken, they got flooded. And they stopped transmitting right in the middle of.
Oh, Jesus.
But also the USGS, so I think that's really good. Yeah.
Could that training be open to, I'm thinking there were people here would be interested, but also it might be useful for the planning board or like commissions, some commissions.
I'm going to be recording it. It wasn't presented that way. It was originally presented like, would you like a training for your wastewater treatment plant staff?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. And then I said to myself, well, there's a lot of other people that might be interested. So I opened it up to like 20 other city staff and everyone's extremely excited about it. And then I thought, well, I could open it to like all boards and commissions, but I never asked Jess if that was okay. And so we might do another one.
Okay.
Okay.
Or I can ask her. I don't know. It's coming up soon though. So I'll ask her.
Well, the message I got from the big chunk of that was it's getting wetter and hotter.
Yeah.
And the concern isn't as much sea level rise. But
Rain event.
rain events,
As well.
slow moving, heavy raining events. And we're in the perfect geography to have lots of damage from flooding. Move a lot of sediment.
The tools used to training is also about for predicted high tides. I'll find out if she's okay.
That's
with
really
some of these others.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because this sea rise, they talk about the sea level rise mapper and, and I mean, probably water treatment plant people probably don't know about that.
Yeah, they don't really find
And
would you need to wrap up within like 10 minutes or less?
yeah, I know. Okay, so, sorry, so the Hudson River, we're done there, okay. Oh, did we
Big
completely
streets,
mention?
I found my notes.
A little bit we covered LWRC,
Yeah.
which is the last day, or
Okay.
Kendall DOS.
I'm sorry.
I'll put that in a minute.
Okay,
So can I talk about complete streets? So, the one thing that I didn't say last time was that the meeting was in September, but I hadn't gone on my notes last time we talked. So we talked about the e-bikes and everything, but they, said that the, Newburgh had, adopted a sidewalk improvement district, like Ithaca and Burlington, and that they're moving ahead with they're drafting a commitment to do the same thing in Kingston. but that they probably, because of all the issues with who the hell pays for it, they're probably gonna have a referendum. Brianna, this is like, you may have noticed the sidewalks of Kingston are a mess.
Yes.
And no, and in theory, the people who own the properties are responsible for maintaining the sidewalks, but of course it's not happening and it's not being enforced and it's really, so the Complete Streets Action Committee is trying to address that, but I don't know. But the other thing is, just to get back to the trees and cables thing, to me, it very much speaks to the heat sink issue. And I wish we could maybe make a formal representation as the CAC to Complete Streets about this issue, because it was really interesting. I got quite salty pushback from a couple of members that, you know, and one member of the Complete Streets Committee in particular said, oh, well, you know, you just want cables removed because it increases house price, you know, house value kind of thing, which, you know, okay, it does, but that's not the reason I'm against them. I'm against them because they're fugly and also because it butchers the trees.
Right.
And we're
So you're talking
trying
about
to
taking
make-
out down the telephone
And it's safer.
cables.
And it's safer, and it also, it prevents blackouts, or
Right.
reduces the amount of blackouts, and nobody ever takes into consideration, sorry, I can go on about this, but nobody ever takes into consideration, like, if you're out for like 3 or 4 days and everything in your freezer melts, that's a lot of money and food waste, and it tends to impact people of, you know, lower income. And I'm sorry, but, you know, I walked down Franklin Street to go vote yesterday, and, you know, the road surface is like glass, and they've done this perfect job with the bluestone, and then all these disgusting wires slung everywhere, and all the trees kind of half cut down, and it's preposterous. I just don't get it. And I think, I mean, again, maybe it's one of these things where, you know, we're coming at the leaf blowers from a noise ordinance sort of point of view. Maybe we could go after it from a heat sink point of view, or, you know, trees or something, but I really would like to press for a change in attitude there, but basically cables take priority over trees at this point. That is the mentality, and it needs to change.
Well, it was very scary to think that your house might freeze this winter when there was that ice storm.
Yeah,
And I mean, it's one thing to have your food go to waste.
right, of course, sorry, yeah,
Have your pipe work.
right, but
I
if your
mean,
pipes freeze, yeah,
and
that's
the-
hundreds and hundreds of dollars and damage in historic properties down, and blah, blah, blah.
All right, so let's put that on the, you know, on the agenda for next.
Can I
month.
maybe start to draft a letter, just,
I mean, this is a long-term, yeah.
yeah, it's a big battle.
And I might add to that, the tree commission spends a lot of time giving people permission to cut down trees because Central Hudson
Yeah.
has just absolutely destroyed it.
Yeah,
Okay, we got
okay, sorry,
7 minutes,
all
so
right,
planning
yes.
board liaison.
The planning board, yeah, Kingston Meadows is on the agenda,
Oh my God, that was, oh
and so is 6585 East Strand.
my God.
I don't know what time to
So,
discuss either.
Can
one.
you say anything about your meeting on the Kingston Meadows?
City staff, a lot of city staff, police, fire, DPW, parks, sustainability, housing, corp council, planning, all met with the Kingston Meadows folks. We aired a lot of concerns. All of the concerns that were brought up by the CAC were brought up by the mayor, and they were all spoken to. Some of them, I think, were sufficient answers, and some of them I think were not. Comments can still be submitted until their next meeting, which is in, I think they need by like the 18th, I think they. she said,
Comments to,
The planning board,
oh,
but I don't, the CAC doesn't have anything else to add, so,
I think commented, many comment.
yeah, I think that right now it's wait and see.
I'll just quickly, Brianna, this is a development in uptown along the Esopus Creek. That's a retirement facility. But it's
retirement housing.
kind of in a floodplain and might,
Kind
yeah,
like-
partially.
Substantial.
There's some issues with it, so we've been talking about it since I joined last year.
We've been talking about it since 2011.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Has anybody told
I think Rick Swansea and I were talking about it earlier than that. When I purchased for the land trust, a small parcel on the rail trail over there.
Wow.
Yeah, that was in 2009.
And then.
it took till 2016 to close.
We'll all be residents in it by the time. it comes.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So there's
Number
comments
draft.
from the November 18th
I think she said that she wanted comments by November 18th from city staff.
from city staff.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't include us.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I know. But I mean, anyone can send a letter to the planning board.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
and
deadline
then-
for public comment is November 18th at 2 p.m.
Okay. And then, the other one is gonna be on the board.
I saw it on the agenda, I saw them both on the agenda.
Yeah, so that one is also, that's on this lovely piece of grass that looks like it's just really nice open space down, across from the Maritime Museum. And in fact, it's private property and they want to build a development down there, which is also somewhat in the floodplain.
Yeah.
So anyway.
The whole of Florida.
Yeah,
Right.
and, okay, so when is the planning board meeting?
That's, I got it open, let me see here, the 21st at 6 p.m. Monday. That's not this
Oh,
Monday,
Monday.
that's a
Monday.
week from Mondays.
Planning board, okay. Anything else on that, or can we, public safety, I have not gone, climate smart, Kate,
We talked about, you had a CCA presentation.
Yeah, the same one we had here, only this was, I think, a little more in detail, because they're a little further along.
Yeah.
So that was the gist of it.
Yeah.
And then Melissa, I showed, I had some presentations, and, small things, repair cafe, et cetera, but that was the big ticket item. 612.
yeah, and in terms of that though, like this whole thing with the LW, or, no, I'm not gonna talk about it, never mind. Ulster County Environmental Management Council. Ted and I were both there. So Ted, do you have anything?
It's all a blur, I couldn't speak to it in this. But I was there.
Wow, sounds like a good time. I'm
I
good.
remember enjoying it, I'll be at future ones, I didn't take notes.
Yeah.
I'm not a member yet, so.
Well, I just want to tell you that I'm also on the water quality improvement, I don't remember what it's called, water quality coordinating committee. So the biggest thing that's coming up is that there is a group of people that are the Ashokan Release Working Group. And there's a Ashokan, that's the Ashokan Reservoir Interim Release Protocol. Anyway, they actually like came out with all these changes and had like a 7-day or really short turnaround on changes with no meeting of the working group. And so that has changed now. So there's a 60-day change.
Where can I go and find out about that?
I'll follow up with you.
Yeah, please. would
But
you?
the biggest thing about this is that the draft interim release protocol would, first of all, eliminate operational releases, but second of all, it would remove the New York City DEP from the ability to choose to release water in excess of 20 NTUs, which is NTUs is a turbidity unit. And that if there were going to be releases over 20 NTU, the county would have to request it. So the county is pretty upset. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the Esopus is our border. Anyway, so they're working this out, but basically the DEP was saying, well, you guys can ask for whether or not you want to release turbid water. Even though the county doesn't have any expertise at all in that.
anyway, so they're watching
The
that.
DEP has a history of mismanaging it as well.
Yeah,
'cause
so anyway, so
twice.
that's a really big deal, that's a really big deal. And then the tree commission gets 30 seconds.
You know, we discussed a bunch of dead trees that DPW says need to come down. Many of them are from lower incomes. And the mayor has said he's going to look for funding to help pay for this.
Oh, great.
So they put them all off contingent on what they were able to find to help these people pay for it.
Great. And as you say, some of them are dead because of the supplements and haircut, yeah.
Okay, so you're going to follow up with the noise ordinance.
Yes,
And I'm gonna send you something about the term relief.
Yeah.
Yeah, they,
You're gonna follow up with ACE.
I'm gonna draft a letter on cables and trees for.
I'm gonna go to the next meeting of the public safety. We're gonna think about if there's anyone on that committee. They asked us to do that.
Right.
What else? We're gonna do the letter to him to go finish up the letter. And anything else? We're all gonna go to all of our meetings and we're gonna. Are you old enough to have a beer? We're gonna take you out for a beer. Oh, okay.
motion to adjourn.
I second.
All right.